Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Robots Are Coming. And today we will be interviewing Professor Ben-Shahar, a professor at the University of Chicago Law School and the author of Personalized Law, Different Rules for Different People. Could you introduce yourself a little bit more, Professor Ben-Shahar?
Yes, hi, Ken. Good morning, and good morning to our listeners. I am a native Israeli who's been living in the US in the last 30 years, a professor at the University of Chicago for 15 years. I'm interested in consumer protection, in commercial law, and more recently, how AI will either disrupt or improve the experience of consumers in our world. That had led me to write this book that offers, and we will talk about it, it offers a new paradigm, a new way to think about how the law can reshape itself, can retool itself with the power of AI.
Yeah, there is so much more AI and tech in the future, and the laws will change. What do you think are the types of personalized laws that will change as a result of the changes in artificial intelligence and new laws?
So let me just kind of stage or place where exactly my idea fits. So much of what the law currently has to do is to regulate and make sure that AI in the hands of private commercial parties like Google or Amazon is used in manners that is not harmful. uh, Primarily to protect, the law tries to protect people's privacy, but also has their aspects of data security and other ways in which the use of big data and the personalization of commercial services is done in a manner that is socially productive and not socially harmful. My idea is kind of looks at the other side of the coin. What if law itself is going to be reshaped in the same way that advertising or medicine or education or marketing or news have been reshaped? What if the law is fueled by big data and treats people differently rather than everybody being subject to the same legal rules? Rather than, for example, all of us having to drive in a particular road at 35 miles an hour because this sign is uniform to everyone. What if different people have different rules? Have to drive, for example, at different speed limits. Maybe I'll reach an age where they can purchase alcohol at different age. People are different. Some are good drivers. Some are more prone to alcohol abuse. Maybe the rules that govern their conduct in society can recognize and respect and dignify their differences in a manner that would allow people more freedoms when they're entitled to, when they may be um, suitable, and maybe greater duties when they're otherwise riskier. And so this, as you see, the idea here is the law itself becoming data fueled. That opens up so many possibilities to think, about the problems, about the benefits, and I'm happy to talk about that today.
Yeah, let's talk about the problems and the benefits because big data is forecasted to grow by 103 billion US dollars by 2027. And the market size of big data is going to be a big deal in not only the Bay Area but also the rest of the country. So, what are some of the problems and benefits that you're seeing, Professor?
So I think, in thinking about this, because this idea is truly revolutionary in the sense that law is accepted almost categorically or, without thinking as having to be uniform. I don't know if in the entry to the San Francisco or Oakland courthouse, there is that statue that you see all over the world in the entrances to courthouses of the goddess of justice, the Greek goddess of justice. Her name is Justitia. She stands there holding a scale of justice. The scale helps her measure objectively the case, right? That's kind of a symbol. But she stands there blindfolded. That's the most striking thing about justice is blind. It doesn't need to know anything about you. Well, that's exactly what my co-author Ariel Porat and I are trying to undo in the book. Justice must not be blind. It must know who you are so as to give you the proper treatment. And we think that that will be great benefits. And I'll talk a little bit about the benefits, but of course, I think most people would be concerned with the potential downsides. Think about how commercial auto insurers are revolutionizing the practice of pricing auto insurance. Rather than using classification categories that are crude, like male, female, age, very young people, very old people pay more, women pay less than men, education, people with more education pay less. These are categories that are correlated with risk they have found over the years from their kind of old big data. Nowadays, they are doing better. They are offering drivers recording devices that actually record how they drive in real time and save all this information. And they know that you're a driver that gets too close to someone else when you speed, or takes sharp left turns, or drives at night, or goes to areas that roads that are more likely to have accidents. All of these things are now becoming the factors that determine your premium. Turns out that there's a great benefit to this. Whatever we're concerned about this, insurance companies knowing all this information, there's one great benefit. People drive differently when they know that their driving is recorded all the time, that there is an eye watching them all the time. So much different that it reduces traffic fatalities for those who drive this way. And the estimates that I have read look at a roughly 30% reduction in fatalities. Now, in the US, we have 40,000 highway fatalities every year. 30% is 12,000 people. So I see this as a great benefit. Using data in this particular commercial service and personalizing the price, the premium, can have an important effect. Now, the law can do exactly the same thing in the rules that govern traffic safety. We're all subject to speed limits, to rules about how and when we can drive, getting license and all that. But all these rules are uniform. Why not use the same data from insurance companies and other data that the government can assemble and personalize the rules that each driver is subject to? You might be a better driver than I am, so you can drive, and that same road, 45 miles an hour. Your instincts are sharp. You're not putting people at risk. I, on the other hand, don't sleep well, and my eyesight is getting poor, and my judgment is a little bit less kind of sharp. So maybe on a normal day, I should drive on that road 25 miles an hour. And if my Fitbit shows that I didn't sleep as well at that night, that morning only 15 miles an hour. It can change day to day for me based on real live data. And that, my co-author and I say, will lead to a further reduction in accidents, further saving of lives, and it's something that highway regulation should consider. So this is an example of how benefits can be tailored to people. Excuse me, this is how the duties that the law imposes can be tailored to people. Similarly, the law grants people rights. Consumers are protected against sharp dealings by banks, lenders, sellers. By getting all sorts of rights, consumer rights, you have the right to get information, you have the right to return goods if you don't like them, you have the right not to be subject to very dangerous products, but different people need different protection. I bet that, you seem to be like a very savvy person. You probably don't need the same rights as someone who has less education, less means, less insurance, less experience when they purchase, let's say, a laptop. When a person comes, maybe let's think about an elder person comes to a shop, and for the first time they want to buy an iPad or some kind of a device. Maybe they need a longer right to withdraw than other people do. Let's give them the opportunity to find out whether they make a good choice, and if the law allows this right to withdraw. Some people only need 72 hours, others might need 2 weeks or a month. That's another example.
I agree that big data has the potential to revolutionize security and the future of data. but there's also disadvantages for mass surveillance of Uber drivers and Amazon drivers and every other job, because privacy is going to be an issue. Consumer rights are uh, going to be taken in, and ultimately the question is, can it really solve the things it says it does, like deter crime or deter folks from doing bad things? I What I'm thinking of is the case in Spokio v. Robbins. The Supreme Court declined the opportunity to clarify the fate of many consumer privacy laws. What do you think of these disadvantages of mass surveillance with big data?
Yeah, I'm massively aware of these concerns, and indeed, my book tries to look at them with kind of sober eye, rather than starry-eyed. Oh, look at all these great things that can happen. Let's think pragmatically what will happen and how our system might screw this thing up. And I'm kind of chilled by the thought that such big data and sophisticated algorithm will be used in the hands of government. It's bad enough when Spokio or others or Facebook are doing this and deciding what information we should have. Facebook personalizes the information, or Google, and decides, oh, you don't need to know anything that has to do with how this particular rule fails or this particular war ended, because you have different ideology. I don't like that, and it might be worse if it is in the hand of the government. We all hear what is happening in the Uyghur province in China, but the UN is now considering it as a genocidal behavior that is facilitated and basically implemented with the Chinese government having a lot of data. Cameras in every place follow you. These eyes follow you wherever you go. They know exactly where you are at any given time. They know they are developing nationally a credit, a kind of a social credit score system where everything about you is stored, and your treatment, whether you can board a train, get a job, ride a cab, get married, have children, is all dependent on these kind of on your credit score, on your social credit score. I think I cannot think of a worse apocalyptic kind of a future. I don't want this to happen in America. But the problem is not so much with the data collection. The problem is with the goals of the government. A government that is trying to reduce traffic accidents should have data. A government that is trying to make sure that people do not say anything against it should not have data. I can see that there are particular policies in the US that we all agree on, are not subject to polarized dissent, like protection of privacy, like reduction of accidents, like consumer protection, that if are done in a way that is data fueled and a kind of AI facilitated, could be done better. It would be really bad to have some policies without not fueled by data, and the more data, the better. Now, what do you do? You ask me, what do you do about privacy? How do we make sure that the government does not use this kind of information in a way that is harmful, that we don't slide towards the Chinese model, at least towards that kind of end, don't have to go all the way. And it's a difficult question. I think that given the prevalence of data rich services already in the market, the added concern that in the hand of the government should be addressed through various ways in which we make sure that the government, when it has powerful tools, does not abuse them. We give governments things that are more dangerous than data. We give policemen guns. We give the government jails, the power to fine people, the power to deny them many rights and many services. And yet we think that we have a court system and a review system and a watchdog system that allows us to make sure that the abuse is to know when there is abuse. It's hard to overcome it, and our generation deals with questions of how force is used by police and so forth. But it is increasingly transparent. The nice thing about algorithms is that they can be even more transparent than how police works or how the Department of Motor Vehicle works, because you read the code. The nice thing about algorithms is that unlike judges and other law enforcement agencies, you can really easily change them. Try to change the way the Chicago police is working. I live here in Chicago. Problem with police brutality and police corruption have plagued the force for over 100 years. Have we changed it? Many mayors tried, many mayors failed. Changes are very slow to come. You know, with an algorithm, change the code. So I kind of see not just the downside of using data in algorithms, but also the upside. And one last thing, the way we envision the regime is you kind of sometimes don't have to be part of it. If you think that you don't want the government to know how you drive or how you shop, so that they would not tailor to your personalized rights and personalized duties, fine, stay out of the pool. You will miss out on you will escape the downsides of it. If they know that you're a particularly bad driver, they might deny you some kind of privileges on the road, and you want to avoid that. But you will also miss out on many other advantages. I think that most people are not as sensitive as commentators are to the question of their data being protected, being used. But if they are either opt out, or the system can have a personalized aspect, kind of predicted consent. How likely are you to want to be subject to that?
Well, that's a deeper question of how likely are the citizenry and the rest of America, how willing are they to give away their access to their data? And although there are some benefits, as you stated, Professor, to allowing the U.S. government to have access to citizens' data, in my view, I think it sets a dangerous precedent. For example, the case out in Cupertino, California, there was a dispute between Apple and the FBI whether or not they should give up some of their data of a locked iPhone of some perpetrators that were committing a crime. The deeper question is, should Apple have given away their data in the name of national security? And that's a deeper question that is happening all around in Northern California. It's also happening around Chicago too, with the police department out there. So to what extent should police departments and governments use the data? But is there a way to use the data responsibly? Is there a way to regulate it in a way that helps both consumers, the citizens, and everyone around it?
Look, there are questions about what the government what powers it should have or not, and they go beyond my stud. I have views about them. I happen to think that in order to prevent further terrorist attacks, it might be worthwhile to let the government break into a terrorist's phone. But nothing in this project turns on my view on that. Whatever we have to decide about what the basic rules are, and then at the second level, enter Ben-Shahar and Porat with their book and say, should we make these rules vary person to person? So in law enforcement, we can say, okay, we have one police cruiser per neighborhood. Or we can begin to personalize it. We say, here is a neighborhood where people are more vulnerable and need more protection. So put more police there. The notion of equality, one per neighborhood or one per X number of blocks, seems to me very superficial and unattractive. I think that we need to look at the value that is being delivered and try to equalize that. And areas that are more crime prone, or where the neighborhood is more vulnerable to some kind of crime, have more protection. Now, how do you do that? You can do it intuitively. In the morning, the chief of police sits down and say, okay, today I think that neighborhood X will. Or you can look at the past data and try to predict it with some more, in a more precise way. Where do you think crime is more likely to happen? And be ready to do that. More interesting and far more controversial, I think, is the use of big data in predicting people's individual perpetrators or offenders' risk. So the criminal law makes the punishment depend in part on how risky you are to commit further punishments. It allows people to get parole, but only if they're not dangerous. It allows people to, it provide, they has the opportunity for bail before being tried, but only those who are not dangerous of committing further offenses while awaiting trial. Judges are asked to make these predictions. They make this prediction as best as they can. They look you in the eye, they get some information from the file and maybe some prediction from a professional. But I have looked at studies that demonstrate that algorithms can do this far more effectively. They can lock far fewer people. The people that they lock for, for example, they can deny bail to less people, free more people before they've been convicted. Those who are released are less dangerous than the ones that judges release. And they will also release far more black people compared to what judges do. Less jails, less crime, and less discrimination if we let algorithms do that. So I think that this is a great potential if we use the right algorithms. I know that some states have begun to rely on these tools, but these tools are developed by proprietary, they're developed by private companies, and nobody can see the code. And judges are accepting the predictions of these tools without knowing how good they are. In fact, there is a decision by the Wisconsin Supreme Court that largely allowed criminal courts to continue use these AI tools of risk prediction that are provided by private companies without granting the defense the ability to peek into the algorithm. I'm mortified by that. I'm mortified by that because I've seen the comparisons between those proprietary private algorithms and the other ones that, for example, have been developed by scholars, including by a team that includes colleagues here at the University of Chicago. And I think that it is critical for the system to work properly, that the algorithms that are used are constantly monitored by the public, by watchdogs, by courts, so that we know that the information they are being fed does not bias them further against interests that we care about.
This reminds me of what Justice Felix Frankfurter once said about, quote, "There's no greater inequality than the equal treatment of equals." So for meaningful equality, it's critical that folks are treated on all relevant criteria that define them. What is your response to that quote, and how does your book address that?
That's exactly my book. You can't, formal equality, everybody treated exactly the same, is a caricature of equality. As Justice Frankfurter said, if you treat equally people who are not equal, who do not have the same needs, risks, histories, you're not, he said, there's no worse inequality by such equal treatment. Another great thinker earlier in France wrote that the law, said it in French, but I'll translate it. The law in its kind of so-called majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor from sleeping under bridges, begging in the streets, and stealing bread. You get the gist of it, right? Yeah, it's the same law, but who is burdened by it more? So equal laws create unequal burdens. Personalized law, it's trying to undo that, to create equal burdens by giving people subjecting people to different rules. I may be allowed to drive, as a young person, get a license at the age of 17. My neighbor, my friend can only do it 19 because they're a little bit more impulsive and irresponsible. Someone else, my sister, maybe at the age of 15 because she matures earlier and has better judgment. And we can, if we have good information about that, not least from our behavior on social media, then maybe we can begin to create equal, unequal rules, but that create basically equal burdens. The denial of a driver's license is a burden. We should exercise it in a way that's equal. Namely, look, when is a person individually and personally ready to drive?
And that's the deeper question. When is a person ready to drive? And that's where personalized law comes in. And I also want to discuss the law of algorithm. There's a lot of professions, including lawyers, judges, and lawmakers, that may be replaced by artificial intelligence and automation. What is your response to the rise in new algorithms and artificial intelligence in the future of jobs in the law space? Is that going to happen? There are studies out there that show that some artificial intelligence and automations do much better at lawyers at some big law jobs. So what is your response, and
Well,
is there a future for us lawyers?
yeah, good question. When autopilot was introduced, it did a lot of good to air safety, but there are still pilots in the cockpit. I think that I really hope that algorithms will replace some of the tasks that lawyers perform, but I think we will still need lawyers to do a lot of things they currently are probably not doing. No, most people that have a legal dispute, that were injured, that have their contract breached, that have some kind of property being violated, are unable to get legal representation because it's expensive. If they were able to go to a company that has software that predicts the outcome of their dispute, that prediction, if accurate, can save the cost of the dispute. I have a student that developed an algorithm that predicts the outcome of trademark disputes between companies. Litigation that otherwise would cost millions of dollars can be resolved at the punch of a button within a nanosecond, because both parties will see that here's an algorithm that predicts with 85 to 90% accuracy the outcome. That's really good. That's accurate. Now we can just settle. And so it is I like that. I think that it will give more people access to some kind of resolution of their legal disputes, and I would like to see that being implemented, and it already is. There are companies that are providing predictive analytics for legal disputes in various areas, auto accidents, tax, employment disputes, and so forth, and this is great. Whether it will make the profession of lawyers obsolete, well, I said I don't think so, but here I don't have anything particularly strong to base my conjecture on. And I think lawyers will just have to provide services in areas where otherwise the AI cannot be trained. AI is good at providing predictions, not entirely clear how much discretion it can have, how much, let's figure out a new way to resolve a new problem. And so many things will have to be done by lawyers, including the monitoring and review of the legality of these algorithms.
There's an article out there that shows that robots are coming for the lawyers. There's an argument that automation could reduce the cost of legal services, making it accessible for individuals who can't have a lawyer. There's also AI-based timekeeping and AI that is able to issue spot much better than lawyers. What role will future lawyers have, knowing that this is the future that we're heading toward?
So yeah, as I said, I'm not entirely sure what role they will have. I think some of the roles that they are currently performing will not be affected by AI, and to the extent. But when people come and ask them, could you represent me? How likely am I to win? As long as the case is one that has many similar cases in the history that have been already adjudicated, where you can train an AI, an algorithm to predict this case based on the similarity to prior cases, those cases, this kind of run-of-the-mill cases, can be resolved by the services of AI. But many cases are not like that. Many cases are different. Each case is different, and the precision of the algorithms that predict the outcome will not be as great. And our world is evolving. We will have, in a society in which there's new technologies and new services and new laws, you'll need lawyers to figure out how to resolve these cases where you don't have yet an algorithm that can predict the outcome. I hope that lawyers will deal that in these situations with really interesting and important issues. For example, the power that some platforms have, that dominant platforms have. How to deal with these issues? The law is struggling to find solutions, and smart lawyers need to find ways to address the risks that concentration imposes and creates. And I think that there are many such examples for how legal services would be needed in an evolving world.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. In this evolving world, lawyers and technologists will need to work together to figure out how to best legislate and think about the consequences of algorithms and the future of the law. So we're almost approaching the end of our podcast here, but I wanted to ask you one final question about what you hope your book will inform both the executive branch of government and also the Supreme Court. What would you want the justices to know about your book, and what would you want legislators to know about your book and the future of legislation and judging?
I hope that my book, in some fundamental way, that goes beyond just the issues that we discussed about AI and technology, will make people a little more, open-eyed about notions of equal protection. Equal protection does not mean we have to blind ourselves and treat everyone like they are yet one more tin soldier in our society, all identical. Equal protection in our society under the 14th Amendment means being open-eyed and sober and understanding the difference between people and the fact that some people have had to overcome greater hardships in their lives or less opportunities in their lives. And the fact that we are trying to equalize the opportunity and the hardship and the privilege does not means that we cannot treat them all like they are identical. I hope that the Supreme Court will take that into account in the upcoming decision on affirmative action in higher education, although I'm afraid that they will not. I admire how the Supreme Court 25 years ago in the Michigan higher education cases said that it is okay to exercise even race-based affirmative action, so long as it is done on the basis of looking at each person as a whole, not just as a member of a race, and doing kind of a holistic assessment of their capabilities and what they have overcome to become a candidate at the university, looking at everything that we know about them. This is exactly what my book is trying to advocate. Let's look at everything that we can know about people, and rather than use old data, namely judge eyeballing and opens a dossier with 8 little rows, let's use the power of technology to inform this very dignified enterprise of treating people as individuals.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation, Professor. It was a great conversation, and I highly recommend your book on personalized law. And we're going to be signing off right now. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of The Robots Are Coming. Next time, we'll have even more professors like Professor Ben-Shahar here talking on the topics of public policy and technology. So make sure you subscribe to The Robots Are Coming wherever you're listening to, and tell all of your friends to do that as well. And do you have any lasting words, Professor, before we sign off?
Have a good day. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep. And you too.